I thought we'd screwed it up. When we went to watch a rough cut, all of us, me, Richard Curtis, Mike Newell, the producers, all thought this was the worst film that's ever been perpetrated. We're going to go and immigrate to Peru when it comes out so no one can actually find us. And that was an amazing impression, I think we all could agree, of Hugh Grant talking about his 1994 hit, Four Weddings and a Funeral, which instead of making Hugh move to Peru, made him a star. Welcome to the second episode of Total 90s Recall, the podcast where we rewatch films that defined the 90s. I'm Molly Merwin, an actor, 90s kid, and film lover, and I'm joined by Chloe Sacker, book editor, fellow 90s kid, and fellow film lover. Between my time on set and Chloe's editorial eye for story, we're bringing insider knowledge to answer the question, were these movies really as good or bad as we remember? Sometimes we're going to bring in some insider guests and industry friends, as we did in our first episode looking at Jurassic Park with Russell Darling, VFX extraordinaire. These guests are going to give us even more behind insight and scenes and industry knowledge. But, that is a lot of talking from me. Let's go to Chloe. Chloe, how are you?
Very good, thank you, especially after rewatching Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Do you like it?
I loved it. I had such a good time watching it, and actually a better time than I expected. I really thought it wasn't going to hold up, but, it really has, I think.
Yeah, so this was my first time seeing it. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. 30 people left the screening.
I mean, there's quite a bit of swearing from the off,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I
you
think
could say that.
probably offended quite a lot of people. But in the UK, I think it was kind of part of its charm. I think a lot of people really loved that opening.
Yeah, because of the swearing and the adult themes, I definitely wouldn't have been able to watch this in 1994, but that's okay because I got to watch it now. A little bit of about it, getting into it. As again, we said it was released in 94 on the 15th of April. That was its wide release in the US. Its UK release was the 14th of May, written by Richard Curtis, directed by Mike Newell, starring Hugh Grant, Andy McDowell, also featuring Kristin Scott Thomas, John Hannah, Simon Cowell, Charlotte Coleman, Rowan Atkinson, and James Fleet. The film was made in 6 weeks, costing just under £3 million, which would be about $7 million today. So not a small film, but certainly nowhere near a big budget film. It became an unexpected success with its highest growing British film in history at the time, with a worldwide box office of $245 million. I don't know what that is in pounds, sorry. It was nominated for some Oscars, including Best Picture. This is before the Oscar 10 that we have today, and Screenplay for Richard Curtis. It would win Best Film, Actor, and Direction at the BAFTAs. Hugh Grant did win a Golden Globe for this role, and the film was nominated for Best Musical or Comedy at the Globes, but it lost to The Lion King, which I hate to say little Molly would be happy about, but it's true. So those are kind of the stats going in. So let's talk about the log line. Just to remind you, if you've never seen Four Weddings and a Funeral, the log line in 1994 was Charles, played by Hugh Grant, a bachelor, is unable to express his feelings to a woman he is attracted to. Over the course of 5 social occasions, he begins to realize the truth about himself and his notions of love. That was the log line in the 1994. Do you think that's a good description of the film?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think it kind of plays on this theme that you have throughout, which is, I think, a bit of an obsession of Richard Curtis's, which is this idea of English repression and inability to express ourselves. And I think, yeah, he often likes to bring in an American love interest and this idea of the kind of clash of cultures and so on. And yeah, I think that idea of unable to get it out. But I don't think that's the main appeal. I think the main appeal is, in a way, the upper classes, watching the upper classes in their social occasions and the friendships on screen. And I'd probably say, at least from my watching, that the romance is secondary in the appeal,
Yeah.
and to be honest, not wasn't my wasn't the main reason why I carried on watching. Um, so yeah, I think the comedy is this, and the social comedy is the main part of its appeal.
Yeah, so let's talk about let's talk about the upper classes and let's talk about the weddings because I'm watching this. One of the first notes I wrote was hats, hats, hats. Is this a 90s things like these fabulous hats at the weddings
Yeah.
or is this like something endured?
I don't know, because I actually haven't been to a wedding for a while yet now, because we're on to the divorces in
Yeah.
my life stage now, or the living in sin. But I would say that they are I think it's a kind of old-fashioned thing that was lingering into 90s, and I do think that probably 90s Britain has more in common with kind of the rest of the 20th century than it does with, the last 10, 15 years, where I think our culture and our society is quite different. So, and I think that's a result of the internet.
In this movie, there's very deliberate, emphasis on everybody putting their hats, and of course, Kristin Scott Thomas and her fabulous
Mm.
hat.
Oh, we've got lots to say about KST and
Oh
her
my god.
outfits. Yeah,
Queen,
yeah,
queen, queen.
love her.
Like
I Yeah, I would say just on that hat discussion, I think it's because it's meant to be a a class signal, and they're quite
yeah,
traditional, and you sort of see from that first wedding that when the younger characters are sort of joking around and saying inappropriate things, and Hugh Grant's character Charles makes this kind of, inappropriate, just on the right side of funny speech as a best man, the older characters are harumphing and kind of
yeah.
going, they're raising their eyebrows and going, "What?" Their monocles are practically popping out of their eyes. So they are kind of, I wonder if it's sort of meant to be, it's a really traditional setup. And I don't think much of this film reflects even 1994 Britain
Yeah,
in most ordinary people's lives anyway, which I found interesting, and I think I enjoyed it, and I think that maybe it is was part of the original appeal of the film,
yeah,
that I feel like the adults around me who watched it, because I wouldn't have seen it in the cinema, I would have seen it on television later on in the 90s when I first saw it. But I feel like the adults around me loved it because it was maybe almost a bit like Hello Magazine, a bit of an insight into those upper class people and that kind of world.
it's like a fairy tale, that's why we
Mm,
watch film, to escape, and this is
yeah.
like a modern day fairy tale, whether it's like the weddings and the extravagance or even like the friendship that Charles has his friend group.
Mm,
Like, I think that's a kind of a very 90s thing to me, this friend group that just goes everywhere together. And, why else do you watch like a I know he didn't direct this, but like a Richard Curtis script or style film, but to escape and to just think about, "Oh, what if?"
yeah, no, I agree. I think there is this escapist element, but also, and this was something that I observed when I was watching it last night and I was kind of interested in it. It has this sort of slightly heightened comedic tone in the script, but there's just enough kind of restraint or naturalism in the way it's shot, in the performances that kind of ground it. So you
Yeah.
can just about believe that these people really exist. I think it's partly because the costumes, we've talked about them and said, oh, they're quite kind of, you know, outre wedding hats and extravagant this and that. But actually they are kind of believable costumes and sets and facial hair and hairstyles for the period, for that class, that level of class. And I sort of feel like those people really could exist. The fact that
Totally.
they're driving the Land Rover, the beaten up old Land Rover, is such a good kind of observational thing for people of that kind of the landed gentry. Like, they really do drive kind of crappy old cars. And that thing, them all bundling into the car together, and you do believe in them to some degree. And I was quite interested actually, because I found this thing from Hugh Grant sort of was saying that he didn't like his own performance, but he noticed that director Mike Newell seemed to be giving direction against what Hugh Grant thought were the natural beat to the comedy. And he said he was making a film with texture, grounding it, playing the truths rather than the gags. And that was the thing that surprised me when I was watching it last night. It wasn't just this broad brushstroke comedy. There are these moments of pathos, which we can get onto, but there's enough of the kind of awkward, the way they deliver their lines, their line readings are awkward, sort of hemming and hawing around the gags. So you kind of
Yeah.
believe that Grant really has blurted out the most awful thing to that character. I think he's called John or something
Oh, yeah.
at the beginning in the wedding, the first wedding, where he goes, "Oh, how's your lovely girlfriend?" And he kind of goes, "Oh, well, she's not my girlfriend anymore." And then Hugh Grant's character, Charles, kind of goes, "Oh, well, probably for the best because we all know that she was shagging someone else all along." At which point we discover that actually she's no longer his girlfriend because she's married to him. So that kind of, all those sort of social faux pas rang true, even though in a way, I mean, they've happened to me. I'll
Yeah.
say that. But
Yeah.
but
Well,
in a
and
way, they're kind of too good to be true.
yeah, and I think to your point, it goes back to, it'd be interesting if Richard Curtis had directed this because it was actually Mike Newell, the director, who, to your point, really wanted it rooted in the realism. He was the one really gunning for the realism. So yeah, I think this wouldn't be as believable, and it probably would have been as popular as it was if it weren't for that realism.
Mm,
Even his deaf brother, and
mm,
actually, I think that was a Richard Curtis thing. I want to make sure I'm looking at my notes just to make sure that I have this right. But he liked this idea to have a comedic situation of deaf and hearing people miscommunicating. But it was
mm.
actually Richard, I'm looking at my notes, who had to work quite hard to convince people to have a real deaf person to play that role.
Oh, yeah,
Which I thought, I mean, yeah, I pretty progressive if you think about it.
yeah,
Which I think
yeah.
this film, like, this film's very progressive, not just talking about,
Mm,
like, the representation of deaf people, but, the representation of a gay couple on
mm,
screen. Because this was in '94, the AIDS epidemic is still happening. I think
mm,
at this time, like, even in America, I should have looked this up, but even in America, they were, like, arresting gay men for basically
mm.
being gay. And
Yeah,
here you have this number one movie in both, the US and UK. I mean, this sweet, sweet, beautiful little couple, and
mm,
handled so well.
mm,
They weren't cliche. This is something I loved about the '90s. I think we got spoiled. Is it was such like effective storytelling because within like the
mm.
first, I don't even know if it was 5 minutes, like first 2 minutes, you learned so much about each of these people.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
just through
even
glimpses of their
yeah,
lives,
you just
yeah.
learn so much about
Mm,
them, and with them, it's a very simple thing because it's, Matthew, which is, John Hannah's character, takes, the shaving cream off of Simon Callow's character, who's Gareth,
Gareth,
and
yeah.
it's how they do it's something you'd only do with somebody you're, like, intimate with or you know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm.
Affection for in that way, but it's so if you immediately you're like, "Oh, they must be a couple." But if they
Yeah,
hadn't done that, I think it would've been like, "Oh, there just must be roommates," you
yeah,
know? So, yeah, I thought in those kinds of ways, actually, this film's, like, really progressive. I'm like,
yeah.
I if this movie had been made, like, 10 years later, I don't know if some of those things I think it would've been more cliché than it is.
That's interesting you say that. I definitely clocked the thing about the gay couple, and it again, it surprised me. I remembered about it when I was watching it, before I watched it, but I had, yeah, I think I sort of thought that the portrayal of the couple, Gareth and Matthew, I thought that they were out to their family, and I don't think they are. They're not even out to their friends, as it transpires by the end of the film. Um, and so I agree with you to some degree that I think it's
Yeah.
quite progressive, and I think that it's really interesting. But obviously, their relationship is very subtle. And I think in today's context, it's quite tame, it's a bit passive. But 31 years ago, the situation was quite different. I completely agree with you that they're really humanized. In the context, the social political context in the UK, is that in 1988, Margaret Thatcher's government had passed Section 28, which was this law that stayed in place until sort of, I think, 2003, which basically said that local authorities and schools run by local authorities, the councils basically, were not allowed to promote homosexuality and weren't allowed to promote it as a sort of valid lifestyle choice, using air
Yeah.
quotes, and to suggest that they were that gay relationships were equal to straight relationships. And so that was, really pretty repressive. And so in that context, I think there's something quite kind of quietly radical. It's not the first time you see gay characters on
Yeah.
screen or anything like that, but there is something it humanizes them, it sort of grounds them in reality, and it sort of suggests that their love is valid,
Yeah.
particularly in the funeral scene. And it makes the straight characters kind of reassess their own,
Yeah.
personal relationships. In the context of, I'm thinking again, the adults around me when I was a child who were watching this, I think it's one of those cultural moments that maybe softens the British public up to this idea of they're not all, they were literally being told in the media that gay men were, animals,
Yeah.
basically. To have this very kind of human portrayal would have sort of really have helped the broader public to kind of accept this idea. And then, into the noughties, and we finally get gay marriage.
And so I think that's what I mean by progressive. This is a mainstream film. But to your point about the like, we're going to skip ahead to the funeral part of the film. But by the way, if it's not clear, this podcast is full of spoilers. So if you
Yeah.
haven't seen Four Weddings and a Funeral and you want to, stop it right now and go watch it immediately. If you can't tell, we love it. Or if you're
It
okay with
is
being
in the
spoiled.
title, though.
Yeah, it's in the title. So yeah, when we get to the funeral, to your point, I was like, they're a couple, but do their friends know that they're a couple? And they call Matthew, quote, Gareth's closest friend.
Mm.
Um,
And
like,
there's a shot, isn't there, of of Gareth's parents, we have to presume, looking a bit sort of horrified, a bit kind of, like they don't approve, and that it's not really explored.
but yet Matthew was in the car with them,
Yeah,
like he was sitting front row with them. I
it's his
wonder if
close
it was one
friend.
of those. Yeah, I wonder if it's one of those things like they didn't realize.
Yeah,
Now they're like, "Oh, no." Oh, they're
yeah.
putting it all together. And it was more so like his father looked horrified,
Mm,
and his mother just looked honestly like a mother would. I felt like just shell-shocked,
mm,
that her child is dead. But the friends didn't know, or like, to me, it was unclear, but maybe it's not important. It
mm.
was unclear if the friends knew they were in a relationship.
I don't think they do because of something Charles says afterwards where he says something to the effect of, "Oh, this great love that was going on under our noses and we never realized," So I think it is meant to be that they didn't know, and they're a bit oblivious. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
no, I
found
think you're
it.
right. And it's kinda like after
Mm,
he died, it's like, "Oh, no. Oh, shit. They were in love."
yeah. And of course, they wouldn't have had any rights, if because they didn't have even civil partnerships then.
Yeah.
Matthew has no right to Gareth's estate. But I mean, I don't think the film is exploring
No.
anything in that sort of, social depth. But I think it's interesting to look back at it and kind of reflect on the fact that I guess if this was a film made now set in the 90s, that I think
Fully.
Matthew's character would have much more to say about it, and there might even be more of a political or politicized aspect to it after the funeral or whatever. Instead, what we have is this very kind of pure declaration of grief, with the quoting of the W.H. Auden poem. And I wanted to say, I feel like that and the moment where Fiona declares her love or confesses her love for Charles, those are two scenes that are, again, I guess unexpectedly quite kind of poignant, and they play on this sort of theme of English repression and, Matthew's case, Scottish repression, and our, British inability to express ourselves. But they are kind of quite grounded, and I think compared to my in my mind at least, compared to other kind of working title Richard Curtis rom-coms, this is possibly the more poignant and realistic of the films. Um, an interesting point, Helen Fielding was the one who suggested the funeral to Richard Curtis. Helen Fielding being the creative Bridget Jones. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
so I think that's quite interesting looking back and seeing that they realized they needed to kind of give it that kind of depth and weight, as fleeting as it is.
Yeah, but wasn't it was it originally just supposed to be 4 weddings, or was there something
Yeah,
'cause it was just gonna be 4 weddings, and then she
yeah,
suggested yeah. No, I
mm,
read that too, I couldn't remember. But I think and a funeral, I think that makes
yeah,
it more memorable, 4 weddings and a funeral, and it's kinda life and death, beginnings and endings, and it makes it, like,
mm,
more it kind of punctuates, like, I guess, like, the romantic point of the film is, like,
yeah,
say what you mean now because you only have so long on this
yeah,
earth, because
yeah.
Gareth was definitely full of life, I think we could
Yeah,
say.
and there's a bit of a theme around kind of what is the point of marriage, and, what is it for me? Charles is constantly wondering about that, and will he ever get married? And, what does it mean to find your soulmate, etc. I feel like it's a bit underdeveloped. Or maybe it's just one of those things that you see so often that it's, for me, the reason why I'm sitting there is for the comedy.
Yeah.
Um, but those moments, with Fiona and in the funeral did actually bring a little tear to my eye,
Yeah.
and genuinely I think there is an element that kind of makes it worth a rewatch, that it's got a bit more to it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the comedy. Let's because you and I were texting and you were like, "Yeah, I've already had like 6 laugh out louds from the very
Mm.
beginning." And it is. It like again, in its effective storytelling, it's really funny that like Hugh Grant's character and, I forgot, I don't know the actress's name. Skylar is the character, right? His roommate?
Oh,
Skylar.
Scarlett.
Scarlett!
Yes,
Thank you, Scarlett.
Scarlett, and
Yeah.
she is played by Charlotte Coleman.
Yeah, who died in
Um,
2001, very young, actually.
yeah, I love Scarlett's character.
I
She
know.
is, when we were sort of thinking of, like, what did or didn't age well, yeah, I had, the gay couple, I had, the fact that we have a deaf character on screen, which I don't think we have very often, and then I love Scarlett's character. I love that she's sort of the only kind of, apart from Matthew and to some extent Gareth, who is posh, Edinburgh posh, she's the only character that has a sort of regional accent. Everyone else is, pretty posh, privately educated, blah blah blah. And I love her kind of daffy hippie style. She's got lots of kind of handmade things that are clearly constructed from hemp
Yeah.
and dyed by kind of dyed in natural dyes. She's got this kind of bright red hair. I mean, it's sort of slightly like she's called Scarlet, but she's so much fun. I love the moment where she scampers off in the wrong direction initially and then gets to the bridesmaids, the bridal party.
Yes.
They're late again for, I think it's
Yep.
wedding 2. And she's got her shades on, and she's sort of, like, trying to cover the fact she's horribly late. I think many brides would find that unforgivable, but
Yes.
there's a bunch of bridesmaids, and she's wearing this hilarious kind of frothy taffeta bridesmaid's dress. I have a lot to say about the fashion, and there's this brilliant gag, which I'm gonna spoil because,
Yeah.
we gotta talk
Yeah.
about it. The brilliant visual gag, which I think, runs throughout the film of hilarious visual gags, where you then see them kinda go up the steps into this, this grand church, and from behind you realise she's trailing the bridal party. She hasn't done up her dress.
Not only that, it's because in the scene before, they're like her and Hugh Grant, her and Charles are like
Yeah.
trying to run. She drops something. She's like, "Forget it." And he goes to get it. She's like, "Forget about it. Nobody's gonna notice." And it's just kind of sad. And then like 5 minutes later, yeah, you see the back of her dress and her bright blue knickers. It's amazing.
It's so funny.
It's so
Yeah.
funny. It's
She's
so,
such a
so
great
funny.
character. I think I would have loved to have more of her, and I think I would have loved to have more of her and Kristin Scott Thomas's Fiona as well. They're
Yeah.
such good characters, and they are kind of the foil to the other female characters.
Talking about AST, her outfit, well, I mean, all of her outfits are amazing, but I
Uh,
especially loved her first wedding outfit. I don't know, I loved it. It was like this like
mm,
polka dots and flowy, and
yeah,
she was just I was a
I
little
love her
unsure.
from the first moment.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, just gorgeous as always, and oh my god, just amazing. And also I love how when they're talking about Andy McDowell, we first see her character, or maybe a second time, and she and Hugh Grant are talking, and he goes, "American," and she goes, "Slut." And I'm just like, just because
I
she's
love
American.
that.
Yeah,
It's really great writing, I think. I mean, obviously offensive to Americans,
yeah,
but
we
that
don't care.
thing of like they have one word back and forth
Yeah,
where
American, duh.
he goes, "Oh, pretty," and she goes, "American." You can tell everything from what she thinks about Americans, and they constantly do, like, they really are, like, lay into it. At one point,
Yeah.
Simon Callow's character is described as, in the main hallway torturing Americans.
Oh my gosh, I love it. The woman's like, "You know Oscar Wilde?" He's like, "Yes, I've met him a few times." And like, it's just so funny, like, so many, like, dumb American tropes.
He tells her he can get her, Oscar Wilde's fax number,
That's right. Like,
which is so 90s.
so 90s. All these weddings are very fancy, but I also feel like all
Mm,
these weddings are very fast. How are people able to plan and
yeah.
coordinate and get a venue in 3 months? Less than
I
3
think that
months.
must be a movie contrivance
Oh,
because
totally.
it certainly isn't the case now. Now, if you want a venue or a church or something, you have to put your name down so 2 years in advance or something.
Yeah, time does exist on a different scale in this film.
Think about Carrie's storyline where I mean, she's a little bit loosey-goosey with
Yes,
her, overlapping
that's exactly what I was
relationship.
about to say. She has sex with him, and then, like
Yeah.
and you learn later that, like, basically the next guy she slept with was her fiancé, but even still,
Mm,
like, she slept with him, they see each other 3 months later at the next wedding, and she's already engaged. It's
yeah.
insane. Where I'm from, because I grew up in kind of a conservative family. I mean, not kinda,
Mm,
conservative family, and there's, like, no sex before marriage, right? So, like,
mm,
you kinda understand, like, there's a lot of people in my family that had very quick engagements, but that's
yeah.
'cause, no sex before marriage. But this, there's sex everywhere, right? So, like,
No,
why
well,
the
certainly with
rush?
Carrie. Yeah. I think also the fact she's marrying a politician with who owns half of Scotland or something, they say, and it's all very traditional. I think it would have taken quite a while for her to kind of, what get in there with him. But there's no I mean, I don't know whether we wanna talk about it now, but, like, there's 0 context for that relationship. We
No.
don't find how, why is she marrying a man 3 times her age? You know, that we don't really get very much idea of what's going on there. Um, but yeah, I mean, the quickness of the weddings was definitely a thing I noticed.
Okay, ooh, I definitely wanna have a conversation about Carrie.
Well, shall we carry on talking about Carrie?
Yes,
Because that for me is the big weak point
yes.
of
Do
the
you know what I
film.
wrote down? Is
Go on.
Carrie a narcissist? Discuss.
I think I don't know. I feel like my problem with Carrie, and I think this is a kind of issue with the film, um, is that she's just a very underwritten role.
Yes.
And I think, there's very little character development. There's no, as I was sort of saying earlier, there's no idea of the motivations behind her behavior. I
Yes.
mean, yes, okay, we understand when she sets eyes on Hugh Grant, we get that.
Yeah.
We fully are cognizant of why why you would just basically be very forward and be like, "Hello, I'm staying over in this pub." But I think she kind of once she seems to be kind of pretty keen on him, and she sort of says after she makes this sort of joke, which is not very funny or witty, about like, "Oh, I thought we were getting married. Now we slept together," kind of
I
thing.
know.
She,
Sorry, super
yeah.
like, misogynist coded. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
oh, guys, like, as soon as you sleep with the woman, she just wants you to marry her. Like, they're so crazy. Like, I think
yeah.
that's, like, misogynist coded for whatever. Anyway,
Well,
sorry
it's a
to
bit like
interrupt.
open your eyes, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, that they even reference, I think Basic Instinct or something, oh, no, Fatal
Fatal
Attraction,
attraction.
yeah.
Yeah.
They reference that. But I think, she seems to be a bit like, "Oh, we had an opportunity to meet each other." In movie land, no one can ever phone anyone or write to each other. Uh, so they lose contact entirely, apparently. And he sort of goes, "Oh, you could have called me, and I blah blah blah." So, but he's been pining for her as if he can't afford a flight to,
Yeah.
maybe he can't. Um, but there is this sort of aspect of like she is apparently keen on him, and she says something like this was an opportunity kind of thing. But then she goes off and basically gets engaged to another bloke who's not a patch on Hugh Grant.
Oh my
And
god, no.
all I can imagine is, because the only thing we know about this man is that he's very wealthy, he's a politician, it's revealed. He seems a bit controlling, but not too bad. I think as far as we can tell, he's just really rich. And she says something when she goes into the antique store where they've got their ridiculous wedding list. She's like, "Oh, yes, I should get married more often because you can get so much stuff." I have known brides say that.
Yep.
They are after I've known women who want to have to get their goods. But I sort of feel like, fine, if you want to portray this woman, this character, as maybe a bit aloof or a bit cold, then give us context.
Yes.
I don't think there's a problem with having an unlikable female character. I just think give us more sense of who she is. We don't know anything about who
No.
she is as a person, really.
We don't know why they're attracted to each other other than they're both hot. Like,
Yeah.
why is Hugh Grant pining after her? Is she just like a good lay? Like,
Mhm.
that's basically what is driving this whole like romance, quote unquote.
Mm,
You said it. Like, she's so underwritten. She's just there to look pretty. She's just there to
yeah.
be pretty. Um,
Mm,
and the reason when I wrote "Is she a narcissist?" It's like she's sitting there in the cafe and naming and counting all the men she slept with,
mm, yeah.
knowing that Hugh Grant has a thing for her, and then
Just
this
really
is
teasing him. Yeah.
teasing him
Yeah.
after. Yes, it was
Mm,
after the whole wedding dress thing. It's
mm.
like, what a dick. I'm like, just you're kinda being a jerk, you know what I
But
mean?
if
I'm
she
just
was
like
yeah.
I'm like, "Are you just a narcissist?" Like, what something's not right here, and they don't have I think you talked about, like, the quote unquote joke of her being like, "Oh, are we gonna get married now?" Like, if they had set up a relationship of them, like, teasing each other and that's, like,
Mm,
their communication, their language to each other, like, maybe that whole montage of her in the wedding,
mm,
shop or whatever would have been funny. I don't know, but it's just yeah, like, I love Andy McDowell, and I hate this
mm.
character, and it's not her fault. She does the best she
No,
can with it.
it's the way
Um
she's written. Yeah,
it's the way she's written.
if she was written by a woman, I think then we would get much more context for, maybe she's insecure and she has to always have, I've certainly known people like this. They've always got to have some admirer on the back
Yes.
burner to shore up their massive insecurity. And yeah, I think we would get some sort of understanding of who she is. I sort of feel like I think there's a thing running through, it's a sort of fantasy because you see it in Love Actually. This idea of the very kind of cool, aloof American woman, or the American women are figures of fantasy
Yeah.
in Richard Curtis films. And I think it's probably a smart commercial move that, the
Yeah.
American woman's the object of lust and love to play to the American audience. I think there's something interesting potentially with this idea of like American being very direct and Englishman being incapable of saying what he really thinks and wants. And their first night together kind of plays on this thing where he sort of is sort of jokingly being like, well, it would be far too much to, carry on kissing you. And they then
Yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead and
yeah.
but, I mean, there's quite a lot to unpack, even the fact that she seems to be taunting him with her list of all her lovers, and the fact there is quite a funny moment where she sort of says, "And then I slept with my 6th, lover on my 17th birthday." And Hugh Grant's character kinda goes, "Gosh, got to that number already and you're only
Yeah.
17."
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot to be unpacked there, the
There's
fact that
so much to
she
be unpacked.
has yeah.
33 lovers she's had.
And all of this could be contextualized. Like, there's
Yes.
no problem. I love a dislikable female character, but
Yes.
I think we don't get any access to her inner life. So
Yeah.
she is just looking glamorous. And so that kind of antipathy that Fiona demonstrates at the beginning, where she's like, oh, he says something like interesting. She goes, slut. And you sort of think, well, at least we know something about Fiona's character from that. We
Yes.
understand that she's jealous, that she holds a candle for Hugh Grant, but she's also got this kind of firm friendship circle that and she's there's more to her. I think there's more to her performance, even though she's not
Yes.
necessarily given a list of likes and dislikes or any sense of
Yeah.
what she does. There's just a bit more to her, and the same with Scarlett. Um, I don't know, we get a bit more sense of their vulnerability, whereas with Carrie, I my issue is, and I used to say this to authors that I worked with on, romantic novels or whatever, we've got to understand why your protagonist loves the love interest, what attracts them to them,
Yeah.
because if we don't fall in love with the love interest along with the protagonist, then we're not yearning for them to get
No.
together, and I wasn't
Exactly.
yearning.
No.
And to me, that last scene is sort of just, it
Yeah.
collapses into cliche.
Yeah, to your point is I almost was hoping, like, he and Fiona would get
Yes,
together or, like
I think you would have that now.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, literally anyone because I don't care about Carrie's character. In fact, I don't really like her. I want to
No.
like her. I really want to like her. I don't even know to your point, like, they mentioned something about Vogue. Like,
Yeah.
Does she work at Vogue,
She
or is
used to
that
work at Vogue is the
that's
line,
what I
yeah.
thought, but that's literally
Yeah.
all we know because he's, like,
We know now
glamorous.
why she's so stylish.
Yeah,
Like
glamorous, da, 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 that is you're right. That one scene is such great writing because it's just, like, one word, but you're learning so much about them and their relationship and
Mm.
all this kinda stuff.
But yeah, that final scene where she kind of I mean, it's the soppiest line ever, and it's quite famous, I think, where she kind of goes, "Is it still raining? I hadn't noticed." And you're just like, "Oh
Oh my
god.
god.
Oh, go back inside, Hugh, and go marry Fiona."
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Hugh Grant lives in my neighborhood. Those,
Wha
like, or at least in
what
this, not real Hugh
now?
Grant.
Yeah.
Charles, this Hugh Grant.
Oh,
It was
yes.
filmed, not Highbury Corner, that's what it's called. Anyway, Highbury Crescent. I'm like, "Oh my god, that's my neighborhood." And then, like, I
Yeah.
see it, I'm like, "Oh my god, that's my" it's weird, this is, 30
Yeah.
years ago now.
Here is actually those rental flats or whatever they are, they haven't really been touched, and
Yeah.
nowadays all of those places would have been bought up and sort of,
Oh my god.
refurbished to within an inch of their lives, but they're sort of
There's
still quite ramshackle in the
so
90s.
yes, and so I 'cause just doing a little bit of research, it was filmed in Islington and, like, right around Highbury Fields, and where they live and he comes out of his flat, like that flat is easily 2 million pounds now, or at least 1.5 million. It's expensive.
Yeah. He can be a sort of bohemian who's, evidently unable to afford anything off the wedding list in the 90s.
Yeah.
And even I mean, I think this is also a thing, I don't know if it comes across to you, but the kind of the quite grand houses and the marquee and everything, it's it's smart, but it's not like any of the interiors, they're inherited wealth, particularly the Scottish castle, and there isn't this sort of element of, you know, I feel like a lot of the aristocracy to this day are kind of basically living in sort of mouldering circumstances because they have these great big aristocratic piles, but it costs a bomb to kind of,
They can't
even
afford to keep them
replaster.
up. I
Yeah.
was talking to somebody
That's why they
about
have
this.
to marry Americans.
Yeah, exactly. You're welcome, Downton Abbey. But yeah, I was talking to somebody this the other day. Is we don't have to do a dive about class in this country, but like to
Mm,
do a dive about class in this country, it is, in America, class is just very money. It's
mm,
money, and maybe a little bit of education.
mhm.
But it's really like how much, like how much money you make. And there's old money and new money, and we can go down that. But here, like you can be a quote unquote aristocrat or upper class, quote unquote,
Mm.
and be living in squalor just because
Yeah.
you inherited this
Mm.
land. But I'm sorry, like if you're living in squalor, you're living in squalor. Like I don't understand. I don't
Yeah.
understand. But anyway,
But
we digress.
they don't have any designer, well, maybe Kristin Scott Thomas or, obviously Carrie, but the most of them are wearing, like, not very flashy
Yeah.
outfits. Um, and yeah, and, like, the Land Rover as well really obviously really kind of stood out to me. I think, yeah, there's this aspect of, like, they're not flashy, and, yeah, that felt kind of, again, a kind of grounding aspect that felt real to
Yes.
me.
I'm trying to see if I have any other notes. Smoking. So much
Oh,
smoking
yes.
indoors, making
The
smoking look
smoking
cool again.
at the dinner table, at the wedding breakfast. Yeah,
So
I
much
definitely
smoking.
noticed that I mean, the thing is, I feel like smoking is making a comeback amongst the youth of today. I aged 1,000 years as I said that phrase. But genuinely, I think smoking cigarettes is really fashionable again. And but it is I found it quite discombobulating when I saw, I think Kristen Scott Thomas smokes, there's
Fiona
several
smoked a
just
lot.
lighting up along with their dinner. And obviously I remember in the 90s, like, you used to have the smoking section and the non-smoking section in
Yes.
pubs and restaurants. What
Listen,
was the point of that?
my second serving job, shout out Carrabba's Italian Grill. I started serving there in 2002-ish.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was a smoking section and a non-smoking in 2002 in America. So it's definitely a thing, but it is jarring when you're seeing Scott Thomas just sitting there
Yeah.
eating, just lighting up again.
Yeah.
And these very fancy places, I'm like, "Are you allowed to do that?"
Yeah.
Um,
Shall we
yeah,
talk about what has sort of aged the best and the
yeah, let's
worst
do
then?
it. I
Yeah.
think 'cause I think that's kinda related to that, is that
Yeah.
smoking.
Yeah.
Um, what you start off? What do you wanna
Well, I mean, I certainly I think what was the immediate thing is obviously the film starts with Charles and Scarlett are late for the first wedding, and they're going fuck, 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 fuckity fuck, fuck, fuck. And it's a very funny scene, and they're driving up the motorway. They get lost because of course no sat navs, and they have no means of telling people that they're late. And so, no one knows they're going to be late until they sort of manage to get in there in the nick of time. And no one is messaging them to be like, have you
where
remembered the rings?
Yeah,
And so that sort of thing, I mean, I think that lateness, you've heard me rant about this, Molly, that lateness is very current. People are late all the time nowadays. And I think that's partly because you can just kind of beg forgiveness on your way out the
yeah,
door, kind of thing. And once upon a time, you made a time and a place to meet. And if that person wasn't there at that place, at that time, then you just never met kind of thing.
Yeah.
But now you can at least tell people, and so that thing of like they're late and it is actually quite catastrophic.
Yes.
So it is the lateness and the lack of phones. I think also there was a thing I saw on the Wikipedia page that Richard Curtis decided to not reveal what the characters do for a living because he thought no one would talk about their jobs in at a wedding. And well, I'm sorry to say that at millennial weddings, they don't bloody shut up about their jobs.
Yes, yes, I saw the same thing, and that honestly, I'm like, "Is it because 'cause I'm an American?" Even though I've lived in Britain, like, a decade, I was like, "What do these people do for a living? I wanna know." Like, at least
I
that
think
would
they
it
don't is the answer to some of the I think many of them are just literally, bon vivants in,
Yes.
Northwest London or something. But, but, yeah, it sort of some of them must have jobs. I think John Hannah's character, Matthew, must have a job.
Yeah.
He's
But,
down
yeah,
he's
I
down
just
Oh, we know that Scarlett gets a job,
yes,
don't
because
we?
she talks about it.
Other thing I think that is very 90s is the use of the word bonking.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I love the little girl's like, "What's bonking?" Also, Skylar's hair is very 90s to me. It's giving me Run
Mm,
Lola Run vibes, which I
yeah.
like, I'm here for.
I love everything about her look. She's so cool. Yeah, love
But
her.
you know what I think is very interesting? A lot of these styles, they're very 90s and they're very now because
Yeah,
90s fashion is coming back. Like,
yeah.
again, a lot of KST's outfits, I'm like, "I'd wear that tomorrow." I think the hats are
Mm,
really the only thing that
mm.
maybe, like, very like, I wouldn't wear a lot of those hats
I feel
now.
like hats have not changed, like, because they're part of a social world from
Mhm.
yesteryear. I feel like if you went into Debenhams to go and get a hat, they'd probably still look like that. Like, what does
To
a lady's hat look like? Just a sort
to
of
be
load of
fair,
taffeta.
again, Queen
Yeah.
KST, Kristin
Mm,
Scott Thomas, like, her pink hat, I was like, "Oh, I would totally wear that tomorrow." I would basically wear anything Scott Thomas is wearing,
mm.
like,
I
tomorrow.
would, but then I wouldn't fit into it. But which is the other thing that I thought was very 90s, or at least has it changed? I don't know. But the fact that, and we should probably talk a little bit about how Henrietta and the other ex-girlfriends are portrayed. But Henrietta is a sort of psycho ex-girlfriend, um, mad and sent crazy because Hugh Grant's character dumped her,
Yes.
and hasn't gotten over it, has been, biding her time to pounce on him at weddings. But when he sees her a second time, she's happy, but she's happy specifically because she doesn't weigh anything, she says. She's really thin and she's got a divine boyfriend. So she's got the
Yep.
two things that a woman needs in life.
Yeah. Like, listen, like,
Um,
very
yeah.
90s, like I was saying with, Carrie and her little joke about, "Oh, we're gonna get married," like, this, undercurrent of misogyny. And, like, I
Mm,
feel like this is changing. I don't think this is necessarily a very 90s only thing. I feel like early aughts are like this too, but, like, you said it, like, this misogyny of girls are crazy and, like, his version of hell is being surrounded by all his ex-girlfriends, which, by the way, he has bad friends, okay?
mm.
His friends sat him at a table with all of his ex-girlfriends. Those are bad
Maybe
friends.
he needed it. I love that scene though. I know it is obviously, "Ha ha, women are crazy," but it is
Yes,
actually a very funny scene.
it is very funny.
Because they all pick on each other and they keep on dropping each other themselves in it,
Yes.
I think. So,
And also, maybe he does have bad friends, but they're good people because they're like, "Actually, he needs to be thropped on. Like, he needs to,
yeah.
like, hear what these women have to say."
And he has this kind of, "Oh, little old me, I've never done anything on purpose in my life," kind of attitude. But I think in it again, if it was written differently, would be a chance to kind of deconstruct that and be like, "Oh, you just bumble through life and you never affect anyone and you don't know what you want." Whereas actually there is, to get on my soapbox, there is a kind of selfishness
Yes.
in people treating other people not being honest about what they want and getting into
Yeah.
relationships with them and breaking their hearts and, and then dressing it up as kind of like, oh, well, I don't know what I want. I mean, basically, he's a 1994 fuckboy, is the
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
But he's so charming and his hair is so floppy and he's got
Yes,
such
yes.
blue eyes. So we
We can
forgive him.
we can overlook it. But also, like, talking about, like, main characters, like, towards the end of the second wedding, he's like, "Oh, why isn't me? Why aren't I getting married?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I don't know if we've earned this." You know what I
No.
mean? Like, I want more fuckboy behavior in the first wedding,
Yeah.
Like, it'd be nice if some of those ex-girlfriends, 1 or 2 of them were in the first wedding, then build upon that in the second wedding.
Yeah.
And then he's seeing, like, his friends starting to hook up, and then it's like, "Oh,
Mm.
why am I not?" Because you're a fuckboy.
I
And
think in some ways, though, I'm quite relieved it didn't go down that route because I think a lot of rom-coms, they are spiritually cleansed in as much as they sort of understand male-female relationships a bit better than we did 30 years ago. But then they are a little bit sort of sanctimonious, and that kind of idea that's crept in with rom-coms where the protagonist must always grow and learn and have its darkest before the dawn kind of
yeah.
moment where they kind of go, it was me all along. I am the author of my own misfortune, and I'm now going to confess and apologize to my, love interest. I find that quite tedious. And so with this, I'm relieved there wasn't growing and learning. And it was played for laughs. And it is just genuinely funny that he's having the worst day of his life
Yes.
because we
Yes.
have to talk about the fact that he then gets trapped in the
Oh my
bedroom,
god, we didn't. Yeah.
the bridal suite bedroom where Bernard and Lydia, I believe,
Lydia. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
have a very enthusiastic married sex in the most hilarious way, and he
Oh my god.
can't get out of the room. And there's a brilliant, again, visual gag where he thinks he creeps out. And I remember watching it and thinking, oh, I feel like it's not that easy for him. He opens the door and then you see it goes back to him and you realize he's actually walked into some weird little kind of cupboard with a wash basin.
And also the sex that they're having is hilarious because Bernard's his head keeps doing this weird
Yeah.
thing, but it's hilarious because her
And
big
she makes
her
the
big
funniest
wedding dress
noises.
is drooped over it and, clearly, like, having these 2 actors are having just, like, the best time, and it's just and I'm also thinking, what about her makeup? Going back to the wedding, like, Bernard has all this, like, lipstick on his face, her makeup looks like it looks like she's been having sex, basically,
Yeah.
and they got which, I mean, like, whatever, but I'm just, like, imagining them going back to the wedding, and people are like, "What's going on here?" And, like,
They don't really
pictures.
show that because then all the humiliation is for Hugh Grant's character. But yeah, I love that moment where he in the end he can't take it any longer, and so he then sort of jumps out of the cupboard and goes, "Oh, found it," and then
Yeah,
scuttles off, only to be trapped by his terrible ex-girlfriend. But
ex-girlfriend.
it's a brilliantly funny scene. It's memorable. It's it is ridiculous, but I can sort of imagine could it happen to me? I probably would manage to walk into the wrong room and get stuck. This must have happened to someone somewhere at
Yeah,
some
see,
point.
I kept thinking I would get caught, like, I would just get caught, like,
Yeah.
there's no question. Okay, so we haven't told each other what line do you think aged the worst?
Okay. Are we gonna say it
Do you go 1,
together?
2, 3? No, just kidding.
Yeah. It has got to be "Buggered me senseless."
Oh, okay.
So basically, for the context is that this random character whose name I do not know, and I don't think he appears later, is appears at the pub. He's a bit of a lech. He's after Carrie, and Carrie kind of with Charles's help kind of escapes, and then this guy sort of settles in, and he talks about school, and he talks about how he knew someone or other another character, and he kind of he goes, he buggered me senseless. But, I learnt a few things from him. And I kind of went, "Oh, okay." And it's meant to be sending up the aristocracy and this awful kind of tradition, if you like, of the fact that in public schools, they were rife with abuse. children were being caned by schoolmasters, and the older boys were partaking in this practice known as fagging, which is where they basically use them as their personal servants. And there was probably a lot of sexual abuse. But
Yeah.
I sort of feel that in today's world, even if it's meant to be a joke sending up the upper classes, I just don't think we would make a child sex abuse joke
No,
in a film
I
today.
would hope
And there've been
not.
quite a lot of exposés about this sort of thing going on in public
Yeah.
schools and so on now. So that was for me that I went, that there's no way you get away with that now.
Yeah. So the one I wrote down, so it's Charles's wedding. Again, spoiler
Mm.
alert. It's Charles's wedding, and he's like freaking out because he's learned that Carrie's left her husband. He doesn't know if he should marry Duckface. I forgot her name. What's her
She's
name?
called
Come on.
Henrietta or Hen.
Henrietta. Henrietta.
Very upper class girl's
Yes.
name. Yeah.
Henrietta. So he's in the back with his best man and his brother, which why was his brother not his best man? I want to know, but whatever. Um, and the priest or the vicar comes in as like ready to face the enemy, talking about like his future wife. And I'm just like, well, that's kind of misogynistic. I don't know. I felt like it was a
Ah.
little like ready to face the enemy. Like,
No,
okay.
I sort of thought it was sort of like face the crowd or
Okay.
whatever.
Okay.
But then I don't know, it's a period piece. I
Yeah.
don't mind. I what there I tell you what offended me. I wasn't offended, but I noticed and I thought was very kind of apparent is the fact that the cast are uniformly white.
Mm,
Um, there's no Black or Asian characters.
yeah.
Part of this is set in London, which is like one of the
Yes.
most multicultural, cities on earth. I think there's the most number of languages spoken. And I was thinking to myself, I suppose back in the day, people did lead perhaps more sort of separate lives to some extent, from other cultures or other classes or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's sort of one of those things where you wouldn't do it now anyway. I think
No,
you
yeah.
much more diverse cast. I put down here, there's more screen time given to that awful pygmy warrior statuette in antique shop
Yeah.
than to real life black people
Yeah.
in kind of brief shots in the background. Like, it that kind of stood out to me as you wouldn't cast it like that now, and
Yeah.
you would have much more diversity.
So let's talk about that. Do you think this would be made today? A.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
so too. I think
Yeah.
it would make a better miniseries personally, and it's
It
actually
has
been
been.
made. It
Yeah.
has been. I never saw it. Did you?
No, I had no
Yeah.
idea of its existence until last
Yeah.
night.
And it definitely had a more diverse cast to your
Yeah.
point. So let's say it's going to be a film. It's a film. Who do you
Mm.
think would be who do you have as the Hugh Grant character?
Oh god.
You want me to tell you
This
mine?
Yeah,
So you
go on.
think? I think Josh O'Connor would be the good Hugh Grant character.
Mm.
'Cause he's very good at, like he's obviously good at drama, but he's really good at comedy, and
He's a good actor.
and
Yeah,
he's
he is a
really
good
good,
actor.
yeah. He doesn't have, like,
Um,
the doughy eyes like Hugh Grant, but, like, I think he would work.
yeah. I think I don't know. I was gonna say I think Lily James would be a fit like they might you can imagine a world where they kind
Gender
of
swap
gender
it.
swap it, and
Yeah.
she would, and because she's such a kind of typical working title actress. She's been in, and she was in the sequel, the kind of
Yeah.
charity short film sequel to this. So she seems an obvious one. I think this idea of would it get made today? Yes, because I think we're on the pendulum swing back into people literally desperate for rom-coms, and people genuinely do want to see romance on the screen. And certainly from kind of publishing's point of view, like romance is a huge thing, and it's come out of the kind of sort of rather sort of fusty reputation it had until recently. It's now
Yeah.
seen as quite kind of cool and so on. And and so it's big, and I think people wanna see it on the screen. And I think also people have a fantasy of meeting your partner in real life. That's now exotic rather than the mindless, depressing, experience of just messaging loads of people.
So
Mm.
I could see this remake happening as a film,
Yeah.
not just as a miniseries. Although what I hope they do it justice and don't, to what we talked about earlier, like ground it in reality.
Yeah, but don't make it too glamorous. I think that's the thing is, like, make it, like, because what's charming about Four Weddings and a Funeral is it is, as I keep on saying, it is kind of grounded enough in reality that you can believe those people have those clothes. If it were made today, you would use what I would call, mockumentary, The Office
Mm.
style camera work, which has become kind of a major part of kind of cinema and TV film grammar, of that kind of shaky cam, almost like you're aware of the camera operator in the scene, like they're
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And I think they might, if it would, if you were going to, and it's almost like it comes part and parcel with that idea of reality, like we have to imagine that these characters are actually being observed,
Yeah,
um for a thing. So I am That's how I think they would do it nowadays.
yeah,
But if they didn't, then they leaned into kind of, I almost think working titles slightly become a parody of itself. And Netflix rom-coms, they're all kind of driving towards this glamorous, perfectly composed, the lighting is quite sort of flattened, but, very flattering,
yeah,
and and that kind of thing of everything is perfect. Um, and actually, it would be nice to have that kind of slightly ramshackle element.
yes. Like
So
Charles and Skylar's Place, because you have that grounded reality, it
mm,
makes the payoff of these awkward moments, like, that much better. So, like, let's
yeah.
hold on to that, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
it perhaps makes the final scene all the more disappointing because it then really leans hard into this movie thing of snogging in the rain. There's some fake lightning for no reason, and the kind of they're saying their lines, and um, it just doesn't really ring true the way the rest of it does. I mean, I don't know what you think. How did you feel about that last?
oh my g I felt like it was okay, like, obviously, this is gonna happen because that's what we've been building towards, but I
Rip
was just
off
like,
the plaster.
yeah, I was like, "Okay, this is where we're going. Of course, this is gonna I mean, he stopped his wedding for her, but again, I didn't, to what we already said, and I think you said earlier, is like, we haven't I'm like, "Okay, I guess because this is what this film is about, that's what we're getting to," but I wasn't, like, really rooting for them because, like,
Mm,
make me fall in love with her. I want to
yeah.
love her. I love Andy McDowell. Make me fall
Mm,
in love with her, and so, at the end, I was just kinda like, "Oh, is it raining? I don't know. I
mm.
didn't even notice," or whatever it was.
I was gonna say, do we want to give it any awards? Because I want to give it some
Ooh,
awards.
what do you got?
Well, if we're for positive awards, I'd say the most gorgeous is actually Kristin Scott Thomas at Wedding
Yes.
3. She's got a sleek bob, she's
Oh,
got dark shadowed eyes, she's got lovely bright lipstick. She's perfection.
she is
I don't
pure perfection.
understand how Charles doesn't just
I
whisk her off
know.
at that
I
point. She's
know.
confessing her love.
Ah.
He kinda just treats it almost like she's told him that she's got cancer or something,
Yeah.
It's like, I've always
Yes.
been in love with you." It's like, "Well, go on."
Yeah, he looks
So,
crestfallen that she's in love with him.
yeah, it's like, you you can't see this woman in front of you?"
Yeah.
So anyway, she's perfect. I would say, sort of most 90s moments is a toss-up between the sort of taffeta bridesmaid dresses and the sort of Laura Ashley style florals at the weddings. Love them. They really take me back. And there's also a line, I think Tom says, "That Branson bloke's doing terribly well," which Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
That must have been insightful business economics chat back in
Yes.
1994. But I think it was also trendy, that kind of thing of like, oh, he's got a company called Virgin, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it's not aged badly. I mean,
No.
he's still a billionaire. He's going up into space, but he's not done anything horrific as far
No.
as I'm aware,
So far,
unlike
so good.
so many other people in the public eye in that period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Revealed to do something dreadful. And then in terms of, like, the most upsetting hairstyle and facial hair combo, I'm gonna give it to Bernard, played by David Haig. He is the one with the moustache and then a severely receding hairline, which is parted and is sort of floppy at the same time.
Okay.
And
I
yeah.
think worst hair goes to Tom, like in Wedding 1, because it's like a butt cut.
Oh.
And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
and I'm like, he looks like a butt cut. But then he gets it together, and he looks kinda good in that last in the Wedding 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I would have said Bernard, but
You
after
can
Bernard,
back me up on
I'm gonna
here
say
on this.
and I'm gonna also nominate
Mm,
him for butt cut.
okay.
And also to your point, I'm gonna nominate, like, most 90s wedding feature is the flower crown, like,
Oh,
flower
yes.
crowns everywhere.
Oh, I think
Um
that's quite like, I suppose, I don't know. I feel like that's quite kind of boho Sienna Miller kind of
Ooh,
vibe.
okay.
So a bit more
I don't
sort of
remember seeing it.
noughties, but
I guess to be fair, maybe it was, like, early aughts too.
yeah. But yeah, no,
Mm.
I mean, I think everything about the wedding dresses are intense. There's a lot of each of the wedding dresses,
What do they
and
call it? Not a cupcake. What did he
a
meringue?
meringue. Yes,
Meringue.
they say
Yes.
that at the beginning, yeah. I
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed that. I think that's them signaling that it's sort of a bit sort of over the top even for them. What's the greatest faux pas? What's the best sort of thing that someone says that is totally dropping themselves in it and making a complete idiot of themselves? I like the whole sequence of events where Hugh Grant arrives late for wedding one, and then his friend says, "Well, at least," it's the groom, I think, says, "At least you didn't forget the rings," and you just see his face fall, and he realizes that he's totally forgotten. And then it's just so perfectly put together, that sequence, because you see the friends are kind of, coming together to try and gather something that can be used to exchange in the ring section of the wedding, but you don't see what they are until eventually and you just see the expression on the vicar's face and the bride and groom's face as they have to exchange these rings, and then you eventually see that it's like an enormous kind of plastic acrylic heart on a ring, and another one which is like a kind of like skull with
Yeah.
wings. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
death metal type thing.
such great direction. Just hold, 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 and then finally show them. We didn't say if you could get invited to one of these weddings, which one would you wanna
Oh.
go to?
Oh, I don't know. I think I do like wedding one because it's a kind of a country wedding. Um, and I'd quite like to see inside the big house. But
Yeah.
I think also the castle in Scotland, there's lots to poke about, and you can tell that all the decor in that castle is clearly just original and has been there for hundreds of years. And so that would be fascinating. And it looks fun, doesn't it? Because there's a
Yeah.
Kaylee and there's Simon Callow torturing Americans. And it's a great fun wedding until Simon Callow dies,
Yes.
obviously.
I
So
know
I'd like to leave early, but not in the
I
way
was
he does.
exactly gonna say the same thing, yeah. I would say exactly what you said, 1 and 3, but leave early, 3 wedding. Although I've never been to a wedding that's been called off or that's been, as dramatic as
Mm.
Charles as the last wedding. So, but then there's no alcohol, then there's no party, and like, what's a wedding without a party? So,
Yeah.
so Chloe, question for you.
Mm.
So it's 13th of May, 1994. These are the top films in the UK. What is
Mhm.
your double feature? So at number 1 is Four Weddings and a Funeral. Number
Mm.
2 is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Number 3, My Father the Hero. I have some comments on that one. 4,
Don't
Blink.
know that at all.
5, Adam Butterfly. Okay. 6, Schindler's List. 7, The Paper. 8, Search for Bobby Fischer. Number 9, Mother's Boys. And number 10, Mrs. Doubtfire. What's your double feature that weekend?
I think it would have to be Mrs. Doubtfire just because that's at least another comedy that I
Yeah.
can remember, and weirdly has a British origin because I think it's based on an Anne Fine novel,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and and has a comedy Scottish person in it, fake Scottish in this case.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I go with that, but they'd be very odd together.
I mean, like, definite future episode, Mrs. Doubtfire. Love that film. For me, okay, so in the US, number 1, Four Weddings and a Funeral. And again,
Mm.
this came out in the US in April, so a month earlier. 2, Cops and Robersons. 3, The Paper. Number 4, D2, The Mighty Ducks. Number 5, Major League 2. 6, Surviving the Game. 7, Naked Gun 33 and a third. 8, White Fang 2. 9, Threesome. Number 10, Schindler's List. Number 11, Serial Mom. And number 12, Mrs. Doubtfire. I kind of cheated on there because
Uh,
I wanted to get Mrs. Doubtfire in my list. But I think for me, I have 2 answers. So I think if I was Molly 1994, I
mm.
probably would have done D2 and Mrs. Doubtfire, right? Because I'm 11 years old. Adult Molly, it's a tough one because I think it's what am I in the mood for? Because I would still probably see Mrs. Doubtfire. I loved Four Weddings and a Funeral, but then you have the classic Oscar-winning Schindler's List.
Mm.
So if I could do like a a threesome feature, those would be my 3 as an adult, if I was an adult in
Mm.
1994.
What are you seeing first? Because I think maybe you'd see Schindler's List first, and then you'd need lots of
Yeah.
light relief
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah, yeah. Schindler
Yeah.
first, then I think I would flip either you could see Four Weddings or Mrs. Doubtfire
Mm.
next, but you definitely do Schindler's List first because, you know.
Yeah.
Are there any recommendation you would give somebody, if they like this film that you think that they should watch?
Well, I wouldn't recommend Notting Hill because I don't like that. I'm gonna go with a totally different film tonally, but which I
Okay.
think is a good romantic film, which is Before Sunrise. That's one of my all-time favorite romances, but is a totally different film in style and substance. Maybe as a nice kind of alternative.
So mine is literally one of my favorite films. I watch it every year, but again, it's kind of it's a vignette. Again, you see these people. It's older than this film, but you see these people like see each other through the years, not months. But when Harry met Sally, I love that.
Mm.
And there's weddings involved, and one thing that has over this one is, like, we really learn those characters, and we want them to be together, and it's fun. I think we've hit everything. Chloe, am I
Yeah.
missing anything? Is there anything you wanna leave on the table? Um,
No, I don't think so. I feel like we've said it all, and I feel
yeah.
like I'm now wallowing in 90s nostalgia.
Yes.
I really
So, I guess we give our final verdict. Is this a comfort watch, a good watch, skip it, or a hate watch? Like, you watch it, but it's terrible. Which do you think it is? I think I know what you're gonna say, but
I'm
what's the
gonna
final
say it's a
verdict?
good watch.
Yeah,
I think it's a genuinely a good film. Obviously, we've given our caveats. We've said
yeah.
why it doesn't there are things that make it a bit of a time capsule, but I think that someone could watch it well, you yourself have watched it for the first time and
I give it a comfort watch. I don't know if comfort's the right one,
Mm.
but it's a fun watch. Like, it's just
Mm.
a really fun, like, the world is ending, fascism's taking over. You just wanna kinda unplug and laugh, like we were texting, and yeah, I literally there are many times I giggled, laughed out loud, but I think my first really big laugh out loud was actually the second wedding when her knickers show. I'm like, "Oh, I mean, I was just like, oh my God, that was hilarious. Well, this has been great, Chloe. We hope you have enjoyed it. What do you think of Four Weddings and a Funeral? Have you seen it? If you haven't, go watch it. Let us know what you think. And since we are a new podcast, ratings greatly help our visibility. So if you could give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. And we are here every second and fourth Thursday of the month. So we will talk to you next time. Enjoy the movies. Bye.